Alright guys, everything has dried up super nicely, and I want to go ahead and finish up this crossing with a little bit of weathering to just blend things together. I'm using a little bit of light dust pigment, and I got a little bit of dark earth pigment by Ammo MIG products. Alright, so I'm going to use a brush here, and I'm going to come in, and I just want to sort of make it look like maybe there's some tracks where like the vehicles have crossed over this a little bit, and the idea is to just make it look kind of dusty, make it look a little bit worn out again, because this crossing has been here for a number of years, right? And I just want to replicate the look of something that's been sitting for a while. It's getting that nice bit of use, and it's just sort of blended into everything else, just weathered up. And see, we're not going too crazy. You just get a little bit in there. You can see it starts to get that dust effect that I really like, so I'm really happy with that. Alright, let's go ahead and get a little bit of brown. I'll put some in my cap so I can transfer it to the model a little bit better. I'm just going to pick up a little bit at a time. And what we're going to do is hit up the ends of the crossing leading into the center of the crossing. So we'll start from both ends like that, and this is just modeling some of that dirt and stuff that gets dragged up from the locomotives, the cars and everything, and it gets pulled over the surface of the crossing like that generally. It'll streak across and it leaves this cool stain effect. And I'm also going to kind of, what we'll do actually, check this out. If I can very carefully tap some of this, let's have some fun. Let's make some little road stains here, huh? We'll spill some of this powder out like that. There we go. Let's make some little stains, have some fun here. Go in, blotch that sumbitch all over, just like that. Not working it too much though, I'm just adding some little highlights of color. And then make it look like this is a little bit worn out. You got some puddles of oil, some dirt stains, stuff from rail cars, just kind of dirtying up this crossing, giving it more age, making it look even dirtier. Look at that. Isn't that awesome? What you can do with these kinds of effects. Really, the sky's the limit with this stuff. You can just go in and do all kinds of cool stuff, and you get all these great effects. And look how much more realistic that is now. It's much more subdued, it's blended into the scene a lot better. And I mean, you can just go in there and you can work it in as much as you like. So I'm going to not get too much crazier than that, but you can of course go in, you can add some of that powder maybe to road work, maybe look like there's some exposed dirt. You know, just go in there and add a little bit more like that maybe. Make it look like it's starting to spread out a little bit. Look at that. Look at that. Ain't that awesome? There's just so much you can do with these little effects. And you can see just how much more realism that just brought into that scene. Just bringing some more color in there. And you can just blend this out and continue to pull some more color into these scenes and really just have all kinds of fun. Like, the sky's the limit with this stuff. You can go in and add some tar stains if you want. You can go in and do stuff like that. You can add little bits of rust. There's so much you can do with a scene like this, and that's why these kinds of projects are so much fun. And you just enjoy the crap out of them once you get going. Once you get all that hard work out of the way, you see the fruits of your labor come together with a scene like this. And now when we back that out, isn't that amazing? You get all those nice effects just blended together, and it only took minutes to do all that work, and it just looks fantastic. Okay, I want to go ahead and switch up to some scenery stuff. Remember, we've made those trees, and I want to go ahead and plant some just in some specific little areas back here to fill in the scene a little bit more, make it look a little bit more realistic. I really only initially planted a couple to get me started over here in this corner, but there are a few more in this little section. And so I'm going to actually go ahead and plant some. And I just use a little bit of white glue once I've chosen the trees. In particular, I got two that I'm going to be using. So I got this one and another that's pretty similar. And I'm just going to basically check to see if I can position them. And then I'm going to just take some white glue, put it on the back stem of the tree. And then if we come in here, I'm going to try to come in and position the tree for planting. Kind of like that. That's not really gonna work that well. Let me see. There we go. Just need to adjust it just a little bit. I just want it to look like there's more behind this scene and it's not like an empty field. Granted, there is a little bit of a house section back here, but there's not much of it. So I'm just trying to kind of come in here. And again, you just sort of eyeball where you think stuff can go. You just kind of look around, and I kind of like the tree being there a little bit. It fills in that little back seam. So I'm going to just punch a little hole in the scenery like that, and I'll test fit this. I should be able to actually drop this one in by hand if I'm careful enough. I'm just going to come in here and try to plant the tree. I like that position, so let's go ahead and force it down. Let's see if it's, make sure it's not trying to bend or anything. All right, and see there, we just added a little bit more depth to our forest area now. Might be able to possibly add another tree back here. I'll have to decide on that. I only got a few more trees left, so we're just going to kind of pause right there and just sit on it. If you're never really 100% sure once you get to a point, you can always stop, take a break, and just kind of rethink some stuff and decide what you really want to add. You could add another tree here, for example, or something like that, but it's your layout. You know, you do what you want. I'm just showing you kind of my thought process here. In this scene in here, you can see I just planted some trees, and there's a little bit of a gap that I kind of want to fill in with some bush material. And that's where these trees come in handy, because I can pull little stems and such off of them. And all you got to do is come in here. Let's drop a little glue in this section. We peel off a little section of bush like that, and then let's go ahead and let's just tuck that little guy in there. Just like that. It's not much, but you can see it helps to blend in the scene and make it look much more natural, because all this foliage and stuff like that grows around those little tree areas, and it'll start to fill in around the tree base and everything like that. So it's handy to just have these little scenes where you can just come in and fill them in with your shrubbery. And I again really love the tree kits because they offer a lot of options where you can just make your own little shrubs and bushes and fill stuff in. So there I've cut out another one, and let's go ahead and try to tuck a little shrub in this section here. I'll just add a little bit of glue. It's just diluted Elmer's, by the way, nothing crazy. They do make like Scenic Cements for this kind of thing. Woodland Scenics and Scenic Express do, but I just use the old white glue, and again, you just go in there, you fill in your bush scene, and you end up with something like that. Alright, so here's another way you can plant a tree. Once you've selected a little spot, you can just come in here with your glue, round it out, add a little glue there to that section. And then I'm going to take more of that shrub material. I can come in like this and push it down into that glue, and you just really make sure that it's going to stay right there. So you can see you just have this little bush, right? Now the cool part is I can take a tree over this, and if I get my little poker, well, let's just come in here, we'll smash down a little opening, and then I'll get my white glue and I'll prepare a stem. So this is a way of modeling that foliage too, where if you want to just start from scratch on a scene that doesn't have a tree yet, you can add your foliage first and then add the tree. So you can see you have a lot of different options for being able to actually plant these things. And I'll just, again, poke that scene out. Let's come in here and we'll force that tree down in there. To go ahead and complete the scene, not only am I adding trees and bushes and things like that, but I'm also adding some line side details like little posts. I'm planning on putting some propane tanks in part of the scene by the crossing because that's there in real life. I've made this little radio tower, as you can see. I just scratch built this with styrene. I made these little climbing pegs, put some conduit on there, and you can see it has a little connection and it has the little antenna at the top. This is a common line side road thing, very easy to make with styrene. I've made a crossbuck because at that crossing that was torn out, that's just a maintenance crossing, they have a single crossbuck that displays 3 tracks. You can see I've made this crossing. I just took some microscale decals, a road crossing on a 3-track, put it on some plastic, and then cut the plastic out to size and glued it onto a post that I painted brown, so we have a crossbuck for our crossing. These little pieces here are just some C-channel, and you can see I painted them silver, and these will just basically be little relays for our dwarf signals which we've installed in the area. There are multiple little posts that are all over that scene as well. Bumper posts to guard the LP, well, not the LP, but the propane tanks for the switch heaters. There's multiple posts that are positioned around the area. Once I get the tanks built, you'll be able to see where these are going, but I have a couple of these which I've just basically cut out with some styrene rod. And then for the scene as well, I've scratch built a relay cabinet out of styrene, and I've painted and decaled this for my fictional town of Westbrook, which is my copy of Fostoria, Ohio, because again, I'm making a model of Fostoria, Ohio, but I'm modeling it as my fictional layout for Westbrook, if that makes any sense. So I've manufactured a relay cabinet and all these other details for the layout, and I'm just going to be putting these all over and installing them, and it'll be super easy. Just showing a demonstration how you can lay in all these different little details. I have 2 little styrene posts that I want to put in here. After visiting the real location yesterday, I found that there were some random little white poles just kind of flying along the track. They're not part of the railroad, they're just simply there from something else. It's part of someone's backyard, so I wanted to add those posts, so that's why I made these out of styrene. All you gotta do is come back into your scene, take your tweezers, and then put a little bit of super glue or white glue at the end of your post, and you can just simply insert them in like that, and you can model them. Now there's one more that's right over here. Punch a hole in your scenery like that with your tweezers, or an X-Acto or whatever thing like that, screwdriver. As long as you're not making a massive hole that you can see. I just try to make a small enough hole that's just big enough that it will fit the post. And then again, you can see you just come in and you just drop that right in there. You can kind of bend these around and make them look like they've been bent, beat up. And there you can see we've just added some more depth, some more detail to the layout. Very simply like that. We're going to position our crossbuck over here in this little corner here. So what I'm going to do is take, again, we'll just insert our tweezers in there, and I'm just going to simply take a little bit of glue. I'm going to just put a dab of it right at the base of that crossing like that, the crossing sign rather. Let's go over to the layout. Make sure that hole's nice and deep, and then we can just insert our crossing. I don't like how deep that was. It needs to be more like that. And there you go. We've added the crossing sign to the scene, just like the prototype has. Here you can see the dwarf for the east approach of this track, and here I'm going to just drop in one of my little signal relay boxes that runs along the dwarf signal. It's just a styrene box, and I just painted it silver, and you can see we just add that there to complete that. There's also one on my 4-track dwarf, which I'll show here. Same process. I'm just going to come in, put some glue on that little piece, insert it right there, come in with my finger so I can secure it, and then I'm just going to kind of lightly press it into the ballast like that. And now you can see we have relays for all of our dwarf signals on the scene. So the last detail I want to make is the propane tanks, and honestly with scale models of these things there's a lot to be desired. A lot of the older kits are for an older type of tank. There are some guys who've made some 3D printed models, but the texture always bugs me with those because it's so rough. There's probably some better resin printed ones. Honestly, what you need to do is just someone needs to make one of those tanks, like longer and smaller, shorter versions, several different sizes in like a resin casting. Honestly, it's something I think I could probably try to pull off if I could dedicate some time to learning how to cast in resin. It's not the hardest thing in the world, and there's a lot of how-tos on how to do that. So anyways, not to go off on all that, what I've chosen to do, because I got a Model 3 tanks, is use a Walthers kit that's pretty readily available from Scene Master, Walthers Scene Master. These are a basic house-style small propane tank, and for anyone interested, there's the kit ID number. There you go. So these are actually made by another company, so that these basically are of a German design, not necessarily American, but they still work. I've used a couple of these kits here and there on the layout, and they look fine. They work for the most part. They'll be able to work in this case. As you can see, I need to make 3 kits because I have 3 tanks on the layout that I need to make. The kits are pretty good. You can see that it just basically comes with a sprue. You have the general 2 halves of a tank. And if I crack one of these open real quick, these are super easy to build. You can see the instructions are super simple, and you do get some decent details in this kit. You do have the stirrups, or not the stirrups, but the what are they called? The saddles for the tank. And they also come with lift rings, which is a pretty nice little detail. It's something you can add. I'm not going to add all these details to the tank, and I might add some of my own details as well. The tanks in real life are very simple and very standardized construction. They're very simple the way they're laid out. Other than that, I will have to put on some piping because there's actually a large pipe that runs between these tanks, but we can worry about that once we get to the layout. So I'm going to go ahead and build these kits. I'll see if I want to add some more details to these, and I'll kind of show you guys what they look like after they're done, but this shouldn't take too long. Here's the innards of the kit. You can see we got the shells for the tank. I just did a little prep work here by sanding these to prep them. That's all you really got to do. It's soft plastic, so they clean up really nicely. These also take paint very well if you wanted to paint these, which I will be doing a little bit of painting to these. But since the real tanks that I'm modeling are white, I will probably leave these the stock color. But I got these prepped. You get these saddles for the tank, so we have enough to do all of them. And we have lift rings and all that all cut out. I will not be using these stems here. I will set these aside in my scrap bin. And the other thing that these come with is extra ends to maybe put a fitting. But I will just save these for some other tanks. Like I said, I could always go back and kit bash some more for something else. But I'm not going to be using these ones that have the little cutout in them. I'm going to be using the flush end for this project. So I'm going to go ahead and put these together, and I'll show you guys what they look like. Okay guys, so what I've done here, back out in the layout, is we're laying down a piece of straight track, and this is our imaginary track, because in real life, again, these would be going straight through. The tank would be alongside the track. Over here there'd be a switch over on the opposite track, so the second track there'd be a Y turnout. Down here there would be another switch where it Ys off. So all 3 of these tanks serve multiple switches, including the sections of track. The piping runs underneath where they actually dug it. So the tanks would be somewhere in this area, and they're relatively close to the crossing, according to the photo. So what I'm going to do is bring my completed tanks out to the layout. And you can see these are all finished here. They've all been painted. And the idea that I want to do is just I want to take them over. I'm going to set them up alongside the main line to get a rough idea of where they need to be. You don't have to sit up perfectly straight, as long as the tank's there. we get the idea of what needs to be there. And they're set up pretty close together like this. So they're basically running, again, alongside the tracks just like that. They're positioned along the main line. Relatively close to the tracks, I have to say, too. We might actually be able to pull these over just a little bit more. But the other crucial detail that we need to see is the relay cabinet. There is a large relay cabinet that is positioned behind the tank. It's something like this. So it'd be positioned there, and then there would also be our radio, our old tower. This would also be positioned roughly right here. So we're going to have to try to figure all that out. Sorry, I didn't mean to kick the camera. So what we'll do, if we like the positioning of everything, we'll go ahead and just try to lay this in. And I do like that positioning, so I'm going to leave the relay cabinet there at least. I'm going to remove the tower. And I know that the relay cabinet needs to be roughly in this area, like that. So I'm actually liking that position. That does look pretty good. Here you can see I just glued the tank supports, the saddles, directly to the ballast. They're in place, just tacked with super glue. What I am going to end up doing is, before I permanently glue the tanks down, I'll lay in some white glue around these little pieces to really permanently seal them into the scene. But I'm pretty happy with the positioning. They'll line up really well with the tank. What I'm also going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and run this pipe all the way between these sections, because there is a PVC pipe section between all the tanks. So I'm going to go ahead and bend a piece of styrene, it's a very thin styrene rod, to mimic the piping, and then I'm going to glue it, and we'll be able to replicate the pipes that run between there. Okay, so I just got the supports permanently glued now. They're positioned just right, and I just dabbed a little white glue onto these areas and then soaked it in just a little bit, only in these little areas though. And then you can see I've ran the piping, the PVC piping, between one end of the tank set to the other, and it's just put in with these little blocks, and it's just glued directly to the scenery, so it looks pretty good. So I can now go ahead and just start gluing the tanks onto these supports. If you wanted to paint these or do anything like that, you could paint them on the scenery. Of course, I mean, in advance, you probably could have painted them before you put them on the scenery. But again, with my particular tanks, the prototypes have white bases. They're painted just like the tank is, so I just wanted to leave everything white here. But you could, of course, go in and add some weathering and anything like that that you wanted to this. But I'm going to keep it simple, and I'm going to go with this setup here. Remember earlier I made those yellow safety pulls, and what I'm going to do now is go ahead and install these. And I'm just going to poke holes in the layout down to the foam just like before. I'll make little bits, and then I'm going to take these little posts. They're just basically little metal poles painted yellow. You can poke a hole in our scenery, and then we'll just carefully insert our little posts like this to guard the tanks from any vehicles. I love when a scene like this comes together. These little details are really what enhance a scene, really bring it to life. It's little details like this. It's always helpful to pay attention to how they lay out these kinds of details in real life. And you can come back and of course replicate them on your layout. So keep going here. You can see it's super easy though. Now these ones on the end kind of come out like that, and there's actually two of them facing the east. So I'm going to go ahead and put one over on the end. Maybe I'll only do one, I don't know. Let's see what this looks like here. Just play around with it, you know, just kind of examine the scene and figure out exactly what you want for a scene like this. Maybe the pole's actually more like out like this. So I'm thinking, from examining the scene in real life, that there's a pole like this, and maybe we can put one there, you know. So I've established all the positioning here, and the smaller details have come in to kind of help place everything together. I now have the finished relay cabinet. I've installed some little feet to it to actually support it, And I'm gonna center it with the blue cap here so I know where to set it back down. I'm gonna pull it up real quick, and I'm gonna glue the feet with a little bit of super glue. If I can get it to come out. I'm getting pretty low on this tube. I've used quite a bit of it out here and indoors. Just get as much as we can out of that. Make sure it's in the right position, and then again we'll use that cap to remember the centering so that it's positioned just right where I want it to be. And I'm just gonna press down, and that'll hold it in place. Ooh, she's moving. I don't want it to move. Definitely don't want that. Let's see here. It looks pretty good there. The positioning looks right. I'm pretty happy with that. Alright, so the next thing is coming in and figuring out where the pole needs to go. So we're looking at this here, and I'm going to say it's going to be about right there. So I'm going to have to do this, come in and make a pilot. I'm going to have to make an extra big hole for this guy. I'm going to kind of pry it out a little bit. Carefully set that. And again, I use a bit of super glue at the base of the pole to set that in. And now what I can do, making sure that I have it in the correct position, I can come in and carefully start trying to position it. I'm just going to center it up best I can here. Make sure it's not crooked. Let's see, it's pretty straight, so that's good. If it has a little crookedness, it's not the worst, but it definitely looks good. I'm pretty satisfied with that. The relay cabinet's permanently in place, and that's pretty much it. Now, with a scene like this, you can also go in, you can add some weeds, maybe some static grass detail around these tanks. The area here, again, in real life, for my prototype, is pretty much all ballast, so I'm not going to get too crazy with that and put anything too crazy in here. I might go back and maybe add some little tufts here, like around the cabinet, but I'm going to keep this area pretty simple. Alright, so here's the completed scene. I'm really liking all those details. Sorry, my shadow's in the way. The tanks look really good, even though they're not the exact kind. In the compressed scene, they work pretty well for the scene. The cabinet and the pole look real nice. I really am proud of that pole too, with all the detail. That came out fantastic, I think. Added this little conduit here, this post. You see these a lot. Just for fun here, you guys can see a basic operation of how these trains would operate on this Y turnout. Essentially, a locomotive would bring an auto rack or two into this yard section, and it would just simply pull it along this Y track and then reconnect into the yard lead. Something similar to this. And growing up and going through Fostoria, I got to see this operation many times. Here we can now watch the locomotive enter that yard lead, go across the crossing with its auto rack, and enter the yard limits. Well guys, we got quite a bit more work to do, but a scene like this is a real fun project, and it really shows what we can accomplish with some effort. We got a long ways to go, like I said, but we are at a point now where we can start running trains, and I'm very excited. And I'm very happy that I was able to document a project like this and kind of let you guys into my mind the way I approach a project like this, adding track, doing scenery, making different details, things like that. It's not that hard, and there's always a way you can model something, is what I'm trying to kind of share with you here at this project. I'll have more projects that I might want to try to film down the road here. We'll see how things work out, but I really appreciate you guys following me on this one, and I hope you guys enjoyed the content. Until next time, thank you for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.